The autumn wind is a pirate, blustering in from sea.
With a rollicking song, he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten. He wears a hooded sash.
With a silver hat about his head and a bristling black mustache.
He storms and he rules the country, a villain big and bold, and the trees all shake and quiver and quake as he robs them of their gold. Is that how it goes?
All 6 of you work your tail off.
5 seconds left. Where you dreaming? 3, 4, 2 rushes Joey. 4.
The autumn wind, the silver and black. Love them or hate them, the Raiders are a franchise unique in all of sports.
The Raiders are different because everybody wants to be one.
What else would you rather be?
The other pro teams are all turning their uniforms black. They all want to be Raiders.
It's a blackout today, baby.
There is no better team to get drafted by than the Raiders. And when you're a Raider, that's the best.
Though a decade of losing may have shaken their pride and rattled their poise, the Raiders' legacy is unmistakable.
For the youngsters who are growing up, they don't remember the heyday of the Raiders coming to town.
Oh, man, we got to have some fight.
It was a franchise that not show up and just beat you, but they would come to beat you up.
A little bit of milling around going on. There's a big pile out. Here come all the Raiders. Holy Toledo, it's a free-for-all.
Making a top 10 list amidst this collection of characters poses quite a challenge.
Pain, baby! It's about pain!
You must be a great player
Touchdown,
while embodying the virtues of the silver and black.
I hit him with a forearm a while ago, so he's out. He's not on his feet.
For me, I mean, you got to epitomize the Raider mentality.
We don't quit. We don't die. We just inflict pain.
I would say Mark Van Egan, no. Otis Sistrunk, yes.
Well, I think ultimately it comes down to winning. I mean, the Raiders are about winning.
Just win, baby.
No matter what order that will be revealed throughout the next 60 minutes of this program, Al Davis will have a problem with it.
The number 10 Raider of all time, Marcus Allen.
You know, with Jordan, you say Michael, and everybody knows who you're talking about. You know, when you say Marcus, you knew you weren't talking about Dupree.
From the moment he joined the Raiders as a first-round draft pick in 1982, our number 10 Raider showed the versatility that would define his career.
Quick toss to Allen. Fakes left, comes back right, throwing deep. Christensen open, makes the catch on the 5. Touchdown, Raiders!
Maybe the most complete football player ever.
Just such a multiple threat. I mean, he could catch it out of the backfield. The guy was great in pass protection. Obviously, you know, he didn't have the greatest speed in the world, but he had that great football speed because he always ran away from people.
Through 11 seasons with the team, Allen is the Raiders' all-time leading rusher and 5th leading receiver. But his performance against the Redskins in Super Bowl 18 made him a prime candidate for our list.
Marcus Allen. Putting back upfield, and Marcus Allen could be gone.
Give me a break. Marcus Allen, everybody knows, takes off, squeezes through, and goes 82 yards for the touchdown.
Cuts one way, breaks across the ground, comes up to midfield with a 62, 68-yard touchdown. Remember that? I remember that.
And then the great part of the play is everybody said Marcus didn't have enough speed. And then he outruns everybody to the end zone for a touchdown.
They were supposed to lose by 21. They won by 21.
Holy Toledo, Marcus Allen has just claimed full title of All-World for 1983.
That play is a signature play for him, and it's a signature play for the Raiders.
Allen had a nose for the end zone, but remains on the tail end of this list due to the arrival of 2 sports standout Bo Jackson in 1987.
I felt really bad
when Bo Jackson came on the team and they had to start splitting time. They couldn't find a way to keep both of those guys happy.
Bo Jackson.
You have to give the nod to Al Davis. I thought it was a really good decision not to play him for 5 years. So, Marcus, I know you're a future Hall of Fame running back, but we kind of don't need you for the next 5 years, so we'll just let you rot on the bench.
But for Marcus to get mad and go play for the Chiefs just bothered me.
And I think if he had played that entire career at the Raiders, he may have been in the top 3 or 4.
No comment. Picking this list, I mean, was it a Raider person to pick this list?
Is Allen a Raider traitor? And does he belong on this list?
Traitor? No way. Never traitor. Even though he did score his 100th touchdown against us. You guys remember that one, huh?
He breaks the tackle at the goal line. He's in for a touchdown. That's his 100th career touchdown.
Yeah. Marcus is way too low. I know Al may disagree, but Marcus is one of the ultimate Raiders.
Al's probably angry if he is on your top 10. He's probably getting a phone call.
You could probably throw him off the list just because he did go play for the Chiefs, and that alone is a mortal sin.
Raiders lore is filled with defensive backs like Jack Tatum, who made a big impression throughout the NFL.
The role of the safeties in the Raiders scheme would be to dominate and intimidate.
Jack Tatum should be on the list.
Tatum. Hayes. Lester Hayes, 13 interceptions in 1 year. Haynes on the other side of him.
Corners Mike Haynes and Lester Hayes formed perhaps the greatest cornerback tandem in history and led the Raiders to victory in Super Bowl 18.
Suddenly the law office of Haynes and Hayes was in service, and what a difference it made.
But to make our list, a Raider D-back has to become part of NFL folklore.
The number 9 Raider of all time, Willie Brown.
Favorite Willie Brown shot is the NFL films of him running back the touchdown in the Super Bowl in Pasadena against the Minnesota Vikings.
He's going all the way. Old Man Willie.
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 Touchdown Raiders.
He was a big play defensive back, and he always had great vision. He was always looking in at the quarterback, and when the quarterback released the ball, and he had the same jump on the ball as the receiver did.
A great cover guy, very smart player, very classy guy, Hall of Famer.
You couldn't trick him, outsmart him. You couldn't trash talk him. He's as good as there ever was.
In the secondary was the great cornerback, Willie Brown.
He was a leader. He's one of the inventors of the bump and run. He's probably the best cornerback in the NFL during that time.
He came over from Denver, so he had to play enough years with the Raiders to get that out of his system.
The best thing that happened to me was when the Raiders traded for him.
Willie shows up and he weighs 225 pounds and he's 6'2". I mean, corners didn't look like that.
Like, how can anybody this big run with these wide receivers? And he could.
Our number 9 Raider shares the team's all-time interceptions record with 39 picks during his 12 seasons in Oakland.
He was a guy that had unique skills in terms of his ability to get his hands on it, his physicality, and his ability to run and be athletic.
Not high enough. Worked hard. He led by example.
Brown's service as a Raider assistant and executive for over 30 years after his playing career only enhances his status on our list.
Not many people can say they're a Raider lifer and go and stay right with the organization.
Willie dedicated his life to the Raiders and Al Davis, and there's nothing that Al likes more than somebody who dedicates their life to him.
So yeah, Willie Brown, good choice. Class act, for sure.
The number 8 Raider of all time, Jim Plunkett.
Jim Plunkett, to me, is the embodiment of the Raider. Rejected by the mainstream, rejected by the establishment, washed up, but Al saw the greatness in him because we see greatness where others don't.
We are a team that is made up of other players that deserve a second, or wanted a second chance and got one with us and revitalized their career.
Talk about a comeback story, heck, that might be the best comeback story ever.
Plunkett was a Heisman Trophy winner and the top pick in the 1971 draft. But his career crashed and burned in New England and San Francisco before joining the Raiders in 1978.
I don't even think the league knew where he went for 2 years. He was on our bench. He was hiding out, but he was mending. His brain was mending. He was getting his confidence back.
The number 8 Raider on our list took over for an injured Dan Pastorini in 1980 and led the Cinderella Raiders to victory over the Eagles in Super Bowl 15.
Everyone thought his career was over.
Throwing for King. Could go all the way. 40, 30. Touchdown, Oakland.
This was the finest hour in the history of the Oakland Raiders. You were magnificent out there today.
I think oftentimes players that go there was always that mystique that they're going to reinvent you. But I think Jim is living proof is that you have to be in the right system at the right time.
Because of that long, deep arm and Cliff Branch and those guys, Al Davis could do what he did best, and that was to strike with the deep ball.
Rolling. And throwing long to Branch. All the way to the 37-yard line.
Under the tutelage of head coach Tom Flores, Plunkett became a true Raider reclamation.
So big, so strong, they just got the ball there somehow or another. Boom, it was there.
And Jim was less concerned about how good he was going to look and more concerned with how good we were going to be.
Doesn't always look the best. Sometimes looks a little awkward out there.
While Marcus Allen stole the show in Super Bowl 18, our number 8 Raider efficiently led Oakland to victory.
He was able to utilize his great experience and be the leader of that group of people.
Plunkett's quiet persona and rocky early career have left him out of the Hall of Fame, but his 2 Super Bowl wins cannot be overlooked.
I think Jim is probably not given enough credit for what he did for the Raiders in terms of leading that team as a person.
One of the most underrated players of all time.
Because without Jim Plunkett's expertise and guidance, you could really build a good case that maybe those 2 Super Bowls might not have actually happened. Love Plunkett. He should be higher than, was he number 8? He should be higher than number 8.
Dave Casper caught 255 passes during his Hall of Fame career, while Todd Christensen was another Raiders standout at tight end.
He makes a one-handed catch. Magnificent.
The greatest receiver of all time, Jerry Rice, played 3 seasons in a Raider resurgence of the early 2000s.
Touchdown, Jerry Rice.
Another brilliant Raiders career belonged to Art Powell, number 84. In just 4 seasons in the silver and black, Powell caught an incredible 50 touchdown passes.
Art was a big guy, 6'3", probably weighed 215, maybe close to 220. Could really run.
Art Powell never really got the publicity that probably he should have.
It takes the deadly duo of speed and longevity to make our list.
The number 7 Raider of all time, Cliff Branch.
In Al's way of thinking, there's only been one wide receiver that's typified the Raiders, and that's been Cliff Branch.
For 14 seasons, Cliff Branch defined Oakland's vertical passing game.
Branch one-on-one with Riley, a leaping catch. Touchdown, Raiders.
Cliff was one of the fastest players I think ever.
Branch again, he's got a step. Touchdown, Raiders.
Hey, he would turn the light out before it got dark.
Every time you think about Cliff Branch, did he ever go short? No, he was always going for 80 yards.
Look at this speed.
That's what Al wanted to do, was to get the 60 and a 40-yard touchdown pass.
What a spectacular catch.
Yeah, Cliff Branch was the ultimate deep threat.
The number 7 Raider on our list had to develop hands to match his speed.
When Cliff got there, he couldn't catch a cold, but he could outrun everybody.
Cliff started yelling for the ball before he got his jock on. You know, Kenny, I got this guy. I own this guy. Throw me the ball.
Snake kept throwing him the ball until finally he caught a couple.
Branch went on to catch 67 touchdown passes, plus 3 more in Super Bowl play.
I could not talk to a cornerback in the NFL who didn't think Cliff Branch was the best receiver in the league.
Not just a fast guy, but a fast guy who absolutely knew how to play the ball.
Al Davis has been looking for the next Cliff Branch ever since Cliff Branch left. So that tells you Cliff Branch was doing something right.
Being another Raider unjustly snubbed by the Hall of Fame cements his status on our list of all-time Raiders.
Probably the best player not in the Hall of Fame. A great player.
And he's not in the Hall of Fame? Can you believe that one?
Cliff Branch, definitely. He should be in that Hall of Fame without any question. And his turn will come.
For some reason, he's not up there with Lynn Swann in the mind's eye.
Lynn Swann.
Soft. Remember, Swann had Super Bowl 10. Great stage in Miami. It lays out, makes these beautiful catches.
While Swann shined in the sun, Branch's nighttime and indoor Super Bowl heroics are overlooked by many, but not our list.
The numbers speak for themselves. That's a joke. I mean, the numbers, Cliff had 60-some touchdowns, Swann had 40 or whatever the number is. Nowhere close to Cliff Branch. Yeah, that's a tragedy.
He never had truly a memorable catch.
Against Jones, breaks a great catch, 5-yard line, touchdown Raiders!
That helps to plant an image in voters' minds.
But yeah, I think, beyond a shadow of a doubt, Cliff Branch belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Number 6 Raider of all time, George Blanda.
Everybody loved George Blanda. The Raiders really are a franchise of resurrection. They really are a franchise that took a lot of guys that were cast-offs, kicked around, discarded, and brought them there and gave them a home and gave them a fresh start. Well, nobody was resurrected more than George Blanda.
By the time George got to the Raiders, he was about 95 years old.
George was old. You know, you look at the list of when people were born in the program. There were guys born in the 30s. There weren't many guys born in the 20s, and George was born in the 20s.
Before being signed by the Raiders, Blanda played 16 years in the NFL and AFL, primarily for the Bears and Oilers.
LaMonica's knee was injured late in the game, and he could not play the following week. His replacement was a 41-year-old veteran quarterback who played sparingly and is used as a kicking specialist.
George Blanda was one of the fiercest competitors.
Ageless George Blanda celebrated his 45th birthday by arching a bomb to tight end Raymond Chester.
The Raiders took this cast-off, if you will, and showed that he not only had more left in the arm, but he had a heck of a lot left in the foot.
George Blanda then became the only player in pro history to score 2,000 points.
People ask me, who's the greatest football player you ever played with? It was George Blanda.
When the game was on the line, George Blanda wanted the football or wanted to be kicking the football because he could win. He was, I think, the greatest clutch player that the game has ever known.
Blanda's inclusion on our list is due in most part to his miraculous run of clutch performances during the 1970 season.
He had a streak of 5 games at which he pulled the Raiders from the jaws of defeat. He was an inspirational leader. He was a talented quarterback and a great kicker.
There it is. Snap. Spotted. It's kicked. That's got a chance. That is good. It's good. I don't believe it. George Blanda has just been elected king of the world.
1970, I'm at Bowling Green watching the Raiders, and this George Blanda every week would come in and win these games for him in the last second. It was nuts.
If a television script writer or a hack pulp fiction writer tried to write the kind of finishes the Raiders have produced this year, they would send him to the loony bin before he ever got past the first proofreader.
That run that he had week after week, either winning games with touchdown passes or winning games with 50-yard field goals, was one of the great runs in the history of pro football.
So should the third leading scorer in NFL history and Hall of Fame inductee be ranked higher on our list?
George Blanda should be number 1 on the list. He is a quintessential Raider. Nobody else that ever wore that uniform was as sensationally miraculous as George Blanda.
You can't think of the Raiders without thinking of George Blanda.
There's no doubting his importance to the Raider franchise and its history, but he wasn't Cliff Branch and he wasn't Marcus Allen, I'll tell you that.
And now, the number 5 Raider of all time, Tim Brown.
It's picked up. Gannon throws out right. Open Brown. Got it. Touchdown! Timmy Brown.
Great receiver. The guy could change things so quickly. Anytime he touched the ball, heart and soul of the Raiders, and one of the greatest receivers in this game.
Tim was a guy who longevity is going to speak volumes for itself. His ability to return kicks early in his career, his run after the catch, and I think he's certainly a guy that empowered what the Raiders were about in terms of a guy who had great speed and could do a lot of different things.
Touchdown Raiders! And it is appropriate that the first score for the return of the Oakland Raiders goes to a heart and soul player like Tim Brown.
Tim Brown with career catch number 1,000, all in the silver and black of the Raiders.
Tim Brown has caught more passes for more yards and more touchdowns than anyone in Raider history. But what if he had landed across the San Francisco Bay?
Now, he's very productive for a long period of time. If he had not been injured early in his career, he would have put up close to Jerry Rice numbers. A lot of people thought if you had switched Brown and Rice, that Tim would have done the same thing in San Francisco that Jerry Rice did.
Oh, Tim Brown! Touchdown, Raiders!
Our number 5 Raider had the stats, but did he have that Raider mentality needed to make our list?
Tim Brown is the anti-Raider because he's way too nice of a guy. He's not wearing spiked shoulder pads with silver face paint. He's not just released from the insane asylum. He's not an accused convict. He's not a draft bust. He's not a scrap heap pickup. He shouldn't even be a Raider. I think he should be a priest.
Touchdown, Raiders!
A very professional person in how he went about his business. And maybe sometimes those guys don't get as much attention, but clearly, from a productivity standpoint, this guy was one of the best ever.
Brown's there. Touchdown, Raiders!
Brown's place in the all-time rankings is secure, but did he just win enough, baby?
He should probably be in the top 10. Tell me what his impact is. He never played on a team that won the Super Bowl. In his career, the Raiders reached the AFC Championship game or the Super Bowl 3 times.
And they did it, annihilating the Raiders 51-3.
In those 3 years, they played 7 postseason games. In those 7 postseason games, Tim Brown caught as many touchdown passes as Ira Miller did.
And through the hands of Brown, incomplete.
My favorite Raider, number 1 on my list. How many quarterbacks that were mediocre through Tim Brown in L.A.? Schrader, Marinovich, Vince Evans. Now, think if he had a Montana or a Young thrown at him, he would have shredded Rice's numbers.
The number 4 Raider of all time, Ken the Snake Stabler.
Ken the Snake Stabler was just the quintessential Raiders quarterback. Party hard, he lived hard, he was a perfect fit for what Al Davis wanted. He could go deep at any point in the game, and yet he could pick you apart underneath as well.
Stabler back. He looks. He throws. Touchdown, Raiders! And Stabler was on the money.
Kenny is symbolic of what the Raiders are, the party guy that when he got to the field, it was really about competing and winning.
Stabler rolling to the left. He's going to go. Wins it in. Touchdown, Oakland.
Okay, in the huddle today, we got the Snake at quarterback, the kid from Alabama.
Kenny Stabler had more charisma than any player I've ever seen. Magnetism, there's not many that had it more than Snake, and he flaunted it too.
Everybody's metabolism is different. Some people need 8 hours. Some people need 3 hours. I don't really need an awful lot of sleep. I would read the game plan by the light of the jukebox sometimes. How much sleep do you need to go play 3 hours?
He was the kind of guy that Joe Green would have ripped his helmet off, and Stabler looked at him and said, "That's the best you got."
Touchdown Raiders! Getting hungover, going to the game, hungover, throwing up before the game, and then throwing 3 touchdowns. Yeah, great. Love it.
Suddenly, disappointingly, another memorable year of glory ended in a single day of defeat.
Stabler has the personality, but does he have the credentials to be the highest-ranked Raider quarterback on the list?
He's not the best quarterback the Raiders had. Just win, baby, was Al Davis's motto. Well, if you believe in that motto, and Al Davis does, then Jim Plunkett won 2 Super Bowls.
Silver and black football is king of the hill in the National Football League.
I go with the guy that won more Super Bowls.
As many great quarterbacks as Oakland has had, the Darryl LaMonicas and the Plunkett's that came after him, Kenny Stabler is the guy you think of as an Oakland Raiders quarterback.
If somebody put a gun to my head and I had 80 yards to go with no timeouts and a minute to play, what quarterback would I pick? I'd pick Ken Stabler.
There he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. Side, he throws. Hit him.
Kenny Stabler was the definition of clutch. He was uncanny at pulling out games at the end.
A wild scramble. 2 seconds on the clock. Castro grabbing the ball. It is on a fumble. Castro has been covered in the end zone. The Oakland Raiders have scored on the most zany, unbelievable, absolutely impossible dream of a play.
Kenny was a tough competitor, a guy who was always prepared, a true Raider.
Stabler, he fires. He's got Castro. Touchdown Raiders!
Just willing to make any throw on the field at any time, and also one of the guys that helped make the Raiders the Renegades that they always have been.
Yasha Heifetz never played a violin with more dexterity than Kenny Stabler is playing the Minnesota Viking defense.
Kenny Stabler was the ultimate Raider because he was a renegade with the flowing hair. He was left-handed on top of that, and then he just won, baby. And that was all Raiders.
Raiders history has been infested with a rogues gallery of eccentric characters.
There are 4 or 5 guys that are demanded on that team, and you'll probably read about them.
None more bizarrely so than defensive end John Matuszak.
I didn't know anything about John Matuszak other than he was supposed to be nuts.
It's the closest thing to being a lion or a cheetah or a hawk that there is.
He didn't disappoint.
Lala Zato was a Brooklyn brawler who defined the body bravado of the Raiders.
I don't particularly think there's a person on this earth that can kick my ass.
Another classic Raiders character was rangy linebacker Ted Hendricks.
Major omission. Defies explanation. I demand to know who's in charge because he belongs on the list.
Oh, the Mad Stork. Well, he doesn't like to be called the Mad Stork anymore. His new nickname is Kick 'em.
He knew exactly what everybody on the field was doing. He was so smart. Just be completely out of position and make an interception or recover a fumble because he had guessed right.
Maybe we got to put him as a alternate on the list. We got to get him up there somewhere.
But to stick on our list, it takes a certain flexibility with the rules.
The number 3 Raider of all time, Fred Biletnikoff.
Fred Biletnikoff, I just thought, epitomized everything a wide receiver should be. Not afraid to go over the middle, always making a tough catch.
In 14 seasons with the Silver and Black, our number 3 Raider caught 589 passes for 76 touchdowns, despite being considered too small and too slow to play in the NFL.
You looked at him and you kept thinking, how does he get open?
He was not really fast. He was not really big, but he always caught the ball, and he made spectacular catches.
4.7 40. Hell, I could outrun him.
We didn't say that Biletnikoff was a speedster, did we? We just said he had great hands.
He was just fantastic. Hands, feet.
Deep bomb being thrown to Biletnikoff up the left side. Leaping catch. End zone. Touchdown Raiders.
He was so good at working the sidelines, so good at catching the ball and handling it.
We're pumped to the left, comes back to the right, throwing to Biletnikoff. Super catch. Touchdown Raiders.
mean, he was just a perfectionist. I mean, he did that every day. He practiced that stuff every day.
He would give up his ears, his eyes, everything to catch a pass.
Our number 3 Raider left nothing to chance, so his already sticky hands were aided by a controversial foreign substance.
Stickum. What? Who created that stuff? I mean, who in their right mind? What do they put glue in a jar?
Raider rule number 1: cheating is encouraged.
Like you said, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. That was one of our mottos. I think I saw a ball stuck to his chest one time without him having to really put his hands on it.
Biletnikoff caught everything thrown to him. Of course, he had all that glue on his hands. The ball used to stick there.
He would tape his forearms from the break of his wrist to the break of his elbow.
So if the ball hit and somehow got through his hands, it'd hit that and he'd get another shot at it.
Biletnikoff was always the greatest because it looked like he walked into a maple syrup factory that exploded.
And the worst thing was that he always had gum. Now his fingers are all filled up with stickum, so there's no way he's going to open up the gum.
Artificially gummy hands would put Biletnikoff lower on most lists. But since this is the Raiders, his ingenuity sticks him at number 3.
Did not need stickum. A psychological thing with Freddie. He just thought he had to have it.
Think about this. Fred Biletnikoff, Lester Hayes. I mean, would they have been great players without Stickum? Will we even know who they are without Stickum?
If it just took Stickum to be Fred Biletnikoff, I'd be buying that company, right? You know, it takes a lot more than Stickum.
Biletnikoff's status at number 3 was cemented by a most valuable player performance in Super Bowl 11.
Typical Biletnikoff. You look back on Freddie's career, he always stepped up in big games.
Anybody who watched him, did you see him play? And if you saw him play, you saw greatness on the field.
But I think Freddie B certainly deserves to be very high on every list.
He was an ultimate Raider. He didn't ask permission. He took it.
We decided to make this list about great Raider players. So sorry, John Madden, you're out.
Hey, you jerk! You big jerk!
John Madden was a crucial element in the history and the success of the Oakland Raiders franchise.
And punters don't count as players either, Ray Guy.
Seriously? Ray Guy changed the game.
Of course, that also means leaving out the man most synonymous with the silver and black.
I think of the Raiders, I think of Al Davis. He is kind of the defining figure of the franchise. I think of Al Davis, I think of the guy that kind of made the Raiders the Raiders.
This was our finest hour. This was the finest hour in the history of the Oakland Raiders.
Al Davis is the Raiders, both for good and for bad.
When you say the Raiders, you don't say the Raiders, you say the Raiders.
The Raiders.
Because that's the way Al says, the Raiders.
The Oakland Raiders.
You look at what he did for that franchise, that Oakland Raiders franchise, you can't deny that he's one of the most important people in the history of the league.
Just win, baby.
The number 2 Raider of all time, Howie Long.
Number 2.
Number 2 on our list of all top 10 all-time Raiders. Is that too high?
That's a little high.
Second greatest Raider of all time? No.
Howie Long is the most controversial ranking on our list, but he's number 2 for good reason.
Howie Long is a game changer. You had to isolate him with multiple blockers. If you don't neutralize him in the middle, you can't get anything done.
Go under by a push up the middle by Long, and he is sacked at the 15-yard line.
He was the brute strength of the team. I think his power, his competitiveness.
And Howie, of course, played everywhere along the line. He was a very versatile player.
Intercepted by the Raiders. Howie Long has it.
Great flat top, great defensive end.
And here's your host, Howie Long.
We measure many modern athletes in dollar signs. We measure Chuck Bednarik in minutes. 60 of them.
So how does a clean-cut kid from Massachusetts become a Raider great?
I covered Villanova when Howie Long was at Villanova. I just didn't see a Raider there. I didn't see a guy who would go on to the Raiders and then be a Hall of Famer. But a lot of that was because of who he played with, and I think having guys like John Matusak, Lyle Alzado, I mean, I think those guys brought something out of Howie that Howie didn't necessarily have when he got to the Raiders.
The Raiders' basic philosophy on defense is to
just out and out beat up the man in front of you.
Getting drafted by the Raiders made him a Raider. Playing so good with the Raiders made him a Raider. Making all those Pro Bowls with the Raiders made him a Raider. I think Howie belongs.
Theismann back. He's hit. Howie Long gets him at the 30 with a great drive.
Howie Long is number 2 on our list because he embodied 2 traditional Raider qualities: innovation and smarts.
Howie brought so much versatility, the ability to play multiple positions, but the know-how, the smarts. I mean, Howie could be coached to do whatever he was needed to do.
He could control games, and he was the guy that the offense, because he moved around, had to know where he was.
Howie was a great student. He was smart enough to realize that for him to play in the National Football League, he needed to rely on some of the things he had to learn.
Howie Long was a forerunner as a defensive lineman. He revolutionized the game to a certain degree.
Our number 2 Raider is a Super Bowl champion and Hall of Fame inductee, but not everyone agrees with his ranking on our list.
What's his career sack number? Because is he all-time sack leader of the Raiders? No, you know who that is? Greg Townsend.
Here comes Townsend. Hits him. The ball is loose.
Too high for me, Howie Long.
When I think of Howie, I think a guy didn't play long enough. And oftentimes you see guys that say, geez, you wish you stopped playing a year ago. You know, and Howie's one of those players you think, gosh, you wonder why he still didn't keep playing.
He's not number 2 on that team. I think Howie was a terrific player and a Hall of Fame player, but I wouldn't make him number 2 on the Raiders.
I don't think Howie Long is a mistake at all. I think Howie Long was a great player. I think he was a great Raider. He was a great leader. I used to go to the games. I used to go back there and watch him. And I would compare those guys to our defenses of the 70s. And those guys could pull.
And now, the number 1 Raiders of all time, Gene Upshaw and Art Shell.
There's never been a better side of an offensive line in football than Gene Upshaw and Art Shell.
The offensive line of Shell, Upshaw, Otto, Harvey, and Spears gave the runners room to roam.
Gene Upshaw and Art Shell definitely should be ranked number 1 in the Raiders' history. The 2 of them, as one writer put it, they blocked out the sun.
That's what has defined the Raiders of the 70s, was the greatness of that offensive line that let them do so many other things.
With big Art Shell, number 78, riding the rush harmlessly away, Ken Stabler hit for 3 scores.
I don't think anybody's got more Pro Bowls than him. They both were drafted as Raiders. How many Super Bowls? How many all NFLs? I think that is a great choice.
Behind beautiful protection from all-pro pair Gene Upshaw and Art Shell, LaMonica hit running back Don Highsmith to drive Oakland goalward.
I think that Gene and Art really understood what the Raider mystique was about. You know, Gene with the padded up forearms and Shell with just this enormous size for a team that prided itself on being bigger and meaner and tougher than everybody else. Those 2 guys side by side were a powerful statement.
Art Shell, to me, was the greatest power tackle who ever lived. Shell was a mauler. I mean, he was a killer.
Well, Gene Upshaw was a great Raider and a dirty player, and I thought he cheated.
You okay, Pitts? Huh? Pitts, I hit him with a forearm a while ago, so he's out. He's not on his feet.
Man, did I hate him when he played, because he was just so nasty and violent and so big and so dominant and so good that, it was difficult to beat him.
It's sort of nice when you turn the corner and you look into that defensive back's face, and he looks a little frightened because he's got 260 pounds running there.
From the Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena, California, it is Super Bowl 11.
Upshaw and Shell proved their number 1 status on our list with their performance on the NFL's biggest stage, Super Bowl 11.
I don't think we ever realized going into the game that the Purple People Eaters could be had the way Shell and Upshaw dominated them.
Art Shell, number 78, consistently eliminated Jim Marshall. Shell was so overpowering that Marshall did not make a tackle the whole game.
That was one time when you really should have given the Most Valuable Player award to the offensive line, and to those 2 guys in particular. Jim Marshall and Alan Page are great players. Upshaw and Shell didn't just block them, they erased them in that game.
We're number 1.
All you got to do is win.
You lose, you go home.
So that's our list. But because this is a show about the Raiders, we decided to bend the rules a little bit.
The number 00 Raider of all time, Jim Otto.
Sure, Jim Otto is going to be somewhere high on that list.
And Mr. AFL 00 Jim Otto, the 9-year All-Pro center.
There's the leader of the Raiders, Jim Otto, the ultimate Raider.
Of course he's the ultimate Raider. You ever seen his helmet? His helmet looked like it just was through a roller derby.
One man who so symbolized Raider commitment to excellence is Jim Otto.
He epitomizes what the Raiders' mystique is about, what the Raiders are about, and the toughness of the Raiders.
Our list is complete with a few notable objections.
This is way off. Where's Bo? Howie Long?
I'd move Marcus Allen up.
Stabler's got to be higher.
Bo's got to be on this list.
Who picks these?
He's got to be on the greatest Raiders list.
Hendricks should be number 3.
Who's making these comments and statements? Please let me know. You need some help.
Disaster this list.